Welcome to another video demonstration in Weiss Software's VisualCAM stencil design series. In this demonstration, I'm going to go into detail of how to use the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box to define paste shapes. I start by going to the Stencils menu and selecting the Setup and Assign Shapes command. You can also access this command using the Setup Assign Stencil Shapes button located on the Stencil toolbar. A third way to open up the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box is to right-click on an individual part and choose Open Footprint Shape Library from the list of options. When using this method, note that rather than starting with the first footprint in the list, the device on which you right-clicked will be highlighted. So let's take a tour of the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box. First of all, the dialog box is resizable and can be made larger if necessary. And as you can see, the box is split into two major areas, the Paste tab area on the left side and the Preview window on the right side. We begin the tour with the Preview window, where the currently selected footprint and its paste shape are displayed. Above the Preview window, you will see lines of text that display information about the footprint and paste shapes assigned for the selected pins. When the dialog box opens, the pins are already selected. To select or deselect footprint pins individually inside the Preview window, just left-click on them one at a time, or window around them. The selected pins will be highlighted and are the ones that will be set according to your shape selection. Below the Preview window, the Select, Deselect All button changes based on whether the majority of the pins are selected, in which case it is Deselect All, or unselected, in which case it is Select All. As indicated by the label, it will either select or deselect all of the pins. You can also right-click on the pins in the Preview window and choose Select All or Unselect All as well. When making changes to parts, note that multiple footprints can be selected at one time. When multiple footprints are selected, all pins of all selected footprints will be affected by any change to the paste shape assignment, and individual pin selection/deselection is disabled. Other options are available in this menu as well: Rotate Angle, Rotate Horizontal, and Rotate Vertical. Rotate Angle will invoke another dialog box where you can enter a specific angle in order to rotate the footprint. Rotate Horizontal will rotate a two-pin part so that two selected pins are horizontal to each other. Rotate Vertical will rotate the part so that two selected pins are vertical to each other. Note that if the vertical or horizontal version of the Rotate command is invoked, and two pins are not selected, either more or less, then you will be prompted to select two pins prior to invoking the command, and the command will be ignored. Other options on this right-click menu include Paste Pad Justification and Pin Location. Use these settings to fine-tune your paste shapes on specific pins if the desired shape cannot be accomplished using the Paste tab settings, both of which I will describe shortly. You can even change the colors of the original paste, modified paste, highlight, annotation, and dimensions in the Preview window if you like by choosing the Set Colors option and using the Color selector to make your changes. To change the view in the Preview window, just like in the main VisualCAM window, press the plus key on the keyboard to zoom in, the minus key to zoom out, and the Ctrl-R keys to restore it to full view. Scroll bars are also available when the entire footprint is not visible. The OK button closes and saves all changes made in the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box. Note that once you click OK on this dialog box, you cannot quickly undo any of the changes. Cancel closes and discards all changes made while in the dialog box. Next, the Query Item button displays information about individual items within the database, using the selection filter as an aid in selecting the desired type of item. When you click on the button, a prompt will appear above the Preview window telling you to select a flash. If more than one item exists in the location you select, the Choose Selection dialog box appears. As you click on items in the Choose Selection dialog box, each selected item is highlighted, and its attributes are displayed in the Item Properties box. When you are finished, click on the Escape key on your keyboard to end the command process. The Measure Between Points button provides measurements between 2 points that you select within the Preview window. Left-click on the Measure Between Points button and you will see a prompt above the preview window asking you to select the base point. Left-click on the point in the window from which you want to measure and a line will become attached to the cursor. Move the cursor to one or more points to which you want to measure. The actual distance between the edges of the items in X and Y, as well as true length, will then be displayed above the preview window. To select a new base point, left-click somewhere else in the window. When you are finished, press the Escape key on your keyboard twice. The Edge-to-Edge button measures the minimum distance between the two items from their closest edges. Left-click on the Edge-to-Edge button, and again you will see a prompt above the preview window asking you to select the first flash. Left-click on the item from which you want to measure. Again, if more than one item is at the selected location, a Choose Selection dialog box appears where you can select your desired item. Left-click on the item to which you want to measure. The actual distance between the edges of the items in X and Y, as well as true length, will then be displayed above the preview window. To measure between the first selected item and another item, press the Escape key once and then left-click on the new flash. To measure between two different items, press the Escape key twice to change the prompt and then click on the desired items. When you are finished, press the Escape key 3 times. The Center to Center button measures the actual distance between the centers of two items. Left-click on the Center to Center button and you will see a prompt above the preview window asking you to select the first flash. Left-click on the item from which you want to measure. Again, if more than one item is at the selected location, the Choose Selection dialog box appears where you can select your desired item. Left-click on the item to which you want to measure. The actual distance between the centers of the items in X and Y, as well as true length, will then be displayed above the preview window. To measure between the first selected item and another item, press the Escape key once and then left-click on the new flash. To measure between two different items, press the Escape key twice to change the prompt and then click on the desired items. And then when you are finished, press the Escape key 3 times to end the command process. The Dimensioning button adds dimensions to each unique pair of original and paste pads displayed in the preview window. For the original paste layer, the dimensions of the pad are added above and to the right of the pad. For the modified paste layer, the dimensions of the paste pad are added below and to the left. For 2-pin parts, the gap between the original pads is to the left. If paste pads are present on both of the pins, then the gap between the paste pads is to the right. The Toggle Part Viewing button is used to toggle the visibility of part data on and off. Finally, the Overlay Mode button turns overlay mode on and off for the preview window. When overlay mode is enabled, paste shapes in the preview window become transparent when drawn over the original pad shape. When overlay mode is disabled, the paste shapes obscure whatever is drawn underneath them. Now let's take a look at the Paste tab. Before we get into the details of how each control affects the design, let's talk about some of the things you should keep in mind when making changes to your footprints. Paste shapes are saved in shape sets. The currently selected shape set is the one to which any edits within the dialog box will be applied. Multiple shape sets are supported so that you can create different sets of shapes for different requirements. Note that during the paste generation command, you will be prompted to select the paste shape set to use during the generation process. It is permissible to not assign any shape to a footprint or a specific pin. During paste generation, there is an option to use the pin's shape if no other shape is associated with the pin. One area of potential confusion involves how the specifications of the shape in terms of height and width and the orientation of some shapes, home plates, melfs, etc., apply in specific situations. For instance, given a quad package like the one shown here, each pin of a footprint has a relative location: top, bottom, left, right, or center. For pins that are left, right, or center, width is the vertical direction and height is the horizontal direction. For pins that are top or bottom, the width is the horizontal direction and the height is the vertical direction. Another way of thinking about this is that the direction pointing towards the center of the footprint is always considered height and width is the other direction. The end result is that one rule can be used for all the pins and give the desired results. VisualCAM will automatically compute each pin's relative location, but for some complex pin arrangements, especially those involving pins with different apertures, the computed relative locations are not always the desired result. When this occurs, you may modify the relative location of the pin. With a footprint selected in the preview window, right-click the pin to be modified and a pop-up menu will appear. Select Pin Location and another menu will be displayed with 5 options: center, left, right, top, and bottom. The relative location assigned to that pin will be checked. To modify it, simply select the new desired relative location from the list. So let's go into more detail now and talk about the Paste tab controls. At the top, by default, 4 columns of information are displayed about each footprint. These can be arranged to your preferences. Left-click on the column headers to sort the rows in ascending or descending order. Left-click and drag the column header left or right to reorder the columns. Right-click on any of the column headers to access the menu that will allow you to hide, uncheck, or unhide, check any of the columns, except the footprint column. That cannot be hidden. In the list of options, you will see one labeled Device. Let's go back for a moment. See the number in parentheses just to the right of some of the footprints? This tells you the number of devices in the design using that footprint. Devices are created when you want to use the same footprint with different paste shapes assigned. In this case, you will have multiple devices with the same footprint name. To see the data for each device, unhide the device column. Now you will see multiple lines for one footprint. The other numbers in parentheses next to footprint or device in the column headers are the number of items displayed in the list out of the total number of items in the library. If I change the setting to show only the footprints that are being used in the design, the numbers will change accordingly. The following menu options are available by right-clicking anywhere in the footprint list. When the dialog box is opened, all the footprints will be listed. To see only those that still need shapes assigned, select the List Footprints Without Shapes option to filter the list. The Unused footprint options are either on, checked, or off, unchecked, and will only appear in the list if there are unused footprints in the design. If you select the Delete Unused Footprints option, all footprints that are not used, identified in the currently loaded design will be removed from the list. The Delete Footprint command does offer a confirmation dialog box for the footprint to be deleted. Once you are familiar with the software, you may check the box to display this dialog only if Shift key is pressed, so you do not have to confirm each time. When this option is selected, the setting is saved to the registry so that all new sessions will not display the confirmation dialog. When the device column is visible, you can add a device to or delete a device from the list. As I mentioned earlier, multiple footprints or devices in the list can be selected at one time. If this is the case, there are several things to be aware of as you work in the library. First of all, when multiple items are selected and you right-click on one of the items, you will notice that the Delete Footprint and Delete Device options have been replaced with the option to delete selected items. If this option is chosen and all devices of a footprint are selected to be deleted, the footprint will be deleted as well, whether or not the actual footprint line is selected. It is not valid to have a footprint without a device. In this situation, you will be asked if you want to delete the footprint or footprints. If a footprint is selected, it and all of its devices will be deleted regardless of whether or not the devices are selected as well. When one or more devices are deleted while the footprint is not deleted, the first undeleted device in the footprint will be used as the replacement device for any part instances that use the deleted devices. Because multiple devices belonging to different footprints could be selected for deletion at the same time, it is not practical to ask for the replacement device for each device being deleted. If that type of control is needed, then multiple deletions should not be used. Instead, you should delete each device separately. Note that all changes made in the dialog box only take effect once the OK button is selected. Choosing Cancel will close the box without saving any of your edits. Next, understanding how paste shape assignment is done on a footprint with one or more devices is crucial to understanding the entire process. As you can see, when the device column is enabled and a footprint has multiple devices, there is one entry in the list for the footprint itself, with its device identity set to footprint, and one entry for each device. Shape assignment will be made based on which instance of the footprint is selected. For example, if the footprint line is selected, the shape will be assigned to the footprint. Otherwise, it will be assigned to the device identified on that line. But during footprint pin shape reassignment, if a device pin was assigned the same shape as a footprint pin, the existing shape will be removed from the device and the new one will be inherited from the footprint. On the other hand, if any device pin had a different shape assigned, you will be asked if the device shape's definition should be removed before the new one is inherited from the footprint. Likewise, during device pin shape reassignment, if the same shape was assigned to the footprint and the device pins, the reassignment will be ignored and any existing shape assigned to the device pin will be removed, so that the device inherits the shape from the footprint. The preview window will display the shape that will be generated for the selected device, regardless of whether or not the shape comes from the device or is inherited from the footprint. Moving on, Shape Set permits the user to select an existing shape set or to create a new shape set. A shape set is where you define all the paste shapes to be used with the currently loaded footprint library. There is support for multiple shape sets, allowing you to have different shapes for the same footprint. This is especially useful when using a master library for multiple customers that each has specific requirements for their paste shapes. The currently selected shape set will be used to generate the paste layer. Once the shape set is established, all subsequent settings lower down on the Paste tab are saved within that shape set. So here I'm going to drop down the list and choose the New option. When the new shape set name dialog box opens, I can either keep the default name provided by VisualCAM, or I can name the new shape set. When I click on the OK button, the new shape set name now appears in the list. If you notice that none of these controls are active yet, it is because you need to select at least one pin first in the preview window. Also note that the controls will change their meaning based on the selected shape type or other settings. Once your pins are selected here, the first control on the left, Selected Pin Shape Name, becomes active. Selected Pin Shape Name is where you define the shape or change the shape assigned to the selected pins. You have the choice of selecting a shape name already created in your library, selecting New to create a new shape, or to leave it set as None. If there is more than one shape within the selected pins, the multiple shape will be automatically set. It is important to remember that changing any of the settings of a shape changes the shape definition and will apply to all uses of that shape in the currently loaded footprint library. When you have already used the current shape on a footprint, do not make any modifications to the settings unless you want all footprints to have this new shape. If you want to preserve your shape but make a similar one with a small modification, have your shape name selected and then click on the Shape Name pull-down and select New. All settings that were assigned to the shape will be copied to the new shape, and you can make your setting changes. Note these changes will not affect paste layer data that has already been created. The changes will only apply if and when the paste data is regenerated. Again, shapes are assigned to footprint pins and saved in the currently selected shape set. If no shape is associated with the pin, no paste will be generated unless during paste generation you choose the option to use the pin shape if no shape is associated with the pin. This option will give you the original pin shape one-to-one on the paste layer. I'm going to choose New because I want to create a new shape that will be associated with all of the selected pins in this footprint from now on. In the New Shape Name dialog box, I can keep the default name or give it a new name. For this one, I'm going to call it Standard Home Plate and then click on the OK button. Now that my shape has a name, you'll see the controls have become active, and now I can define it. After you have selected the shape name, you need to specify the type of shape to use for that shape name. VisualCAM includes many preset shapes from which to choose. An easy way to see what the different shapes will look like on your footprint is to hover over the first one on the list, in this case, home plate, and then just press the down arrow on the keyboard. As each shape type is highlighted, the view in the preview window will change. If you use the original shape type for the pin, the shape of the pin is the basis of the paste shape. Note that when selecting the original shape type, care must be used when applying the rule if the base aperture is a custom. For custom apertures, only rules that modify both the height and width using the same method, percent or offset, and by the same amount will be permitted. The system will not permit modifying one dimension by percent and the other by offset, even if the resulting modification amount will be the same. To reduce or eliminate custom apertures, see the Customs to Intrinsics command. Choosing aperture means an aperture previously created or loaded into the VisualCAM aperture list will be selected. Array creates a pattern of dots based on the extents of the source flash, and 3 parameters are required for this shape rule: area percentage, dots per column, and dots per row. Optionally, you can stagger the dots on odd or even rows. The size of the dots is computed to meet the area percentage requested. The dots are spaced evenly with the same distance between the dots and the extents of the original shape. Note that if the area percentage is so great that the dots overlap, then the dots will also extend outside the extents of the original shape. So for my first footprint, standard home plate, I'm going to choose the home plate shape type. Underneath the shape type are the options for setting the size of the shape. If I select the option area percentage, the actual height and width of the original shape are calculated to produce that percentage, and the same percentage change in both height and width are maintained. The resulting area percentage is the closest that can be obtained using whole percentage point changes. Also note that other modifications such as rounding corners or window pane will change the reduction amount to include those changes, so the size reduction will change as well. Notice the information block above the preview window is updated as you make your changes. You also have the option of fixing the height and width by a certain size, increasing or decreasing them by a certain percentage, or offsetting height or width by a specified amount. I can increase or decrease the shape height and width, for example, decreasing the height and width by -25%. I can also change the protrusion length, which is active for shapes that have insets or protrusions, like the home plate, inverted home plate, MILF, and snub-nose shapes. There are other options that only become active based on the shape type selected. For example, if I change the shape type to dog bone, I can now change the waist width. If I choose the MILF shape, I can change the inset width. Choosing the array shape activates the dots per column, dots per row, and stagger array row controls. Corner radius specifies the radius of the corners of the shape, and it is only enabled for shapes that have corners. After entering an amount, press the Enter key to update the preview window. Types that include corners will also activate the chamfer corners option. This will bevel the corners of your shape. There is also an option for custom corners if I only want certain corners rounded or chamfered. Reverse direction is for shapes that have a directional aspect, like home plate, inverted home plate, MILF, bullet, snub nose, and triangle shapes. The direction of the shape may be reversed. Note that for these shapes, the default direction is always pointing inward. Reversing the direction makes the shape point outward. Also note that center pins are treated the same as bottom pins if a direction is required. Remember that the direction of the shape is based on the pin's relative location. Earlier I mentioned setting a pin's location: center, left, right, top, or bottom. This is where it can be used to control the direction of a shape. To shift the shapes so that they abut the specified edge of the original shape, select the Justify the Replacement Shape To option. You can also specify whether the shape should abut the inner or outer edges and whether it should be offset and by how much. The Compute button is used to compute the exact values of the justification to get the desired effect, while maintaining the abstractness of the paste shape definition. This button is only active when the selected footprint device is a 2-pin part. Left-clicking on the Compute button opens another dialog box where the user selects how the justification is to be computed and the justification amount. The system then computes the appropriate settings to achieve the specified spacing between the paste pads and enters this value in the offset. Justification of the paste data may also be controlled on individual pins. To do this, in the preview window, right-click on the pin to which you wish to apply special justification settings and select the Paste Pad Justification menu option. In the submenu, choose from the desired justification. When the paste justification of a pin is set to anything other than none, the user is asked for the X and Y offset to be used. Note that the pin offset is used in place of any offset specified in the Global Shape Justification offset. If only one offset is needed, the other can be set to 0. Note that when individual pin justification is used, it overrides any justification settings of the shape. Also, after you make your choice, you may have to zoom in again to see the changes that were applied to the pin. Note that the justification direction is as viewed in the preview window, which is the same as a part instance with 0 degrees rotation and not mirrored. When generated, the justified paste pad location will be in the same position relative to the other components of the part, regardless of the actual rotation or mirroring of the part instance. Next, when the window pane the replacement shape option is selected, the resulting shape will be window paned according to the specified parameters set up below it. Note that horizontal and vertical are relative to the orientation of the shape. The gap size is the width of the window pane gaps, specified as either an absolute or as a percentage of the minimum of the width and height. All gaps are the same size regardless of orientation. The number of horizontal gaps is the number of gaps you want the system to generate across the width of the shape. The number of vertical gaps is the number of gaps to generate parallel to the height. Gap angle is the number of degrees the window pane should be rotated counterclockwise around a central axis. For a diagonal gap, the window pane gaps intersect the corners of the part. You will then continue this process until all the footprint shapes in the design have been defined. Moving on to the controls at the bottom of the Paste tab, the Load button permits the loading of a previously saved VisualCAM footprint library or stencil shape set. When you have finished defining all the shapes, you should save your footprint library. When saving the library, it will include the current shape set assigned. You also have the option to save the shape set separately to use with other footprint libraries. When you save your .vcam file, the shape set and the footprint library are saved in the file as well. If you do not save the footprint library .fpl or paste shapeset.shp file separately, you can always go back and open the .vcam design file in order to save these files for use on another design file. Note that when saving your footprint library or shape set with the same name as one already saved, you will be prompted for a password. The password protection is to help prevent users from overwriting a master library. The Set by Pitch option permits the creation and paste assignment of paste shapes based on pitch rules. This is applicable to footprints for DIP, quad, and single-row column parts. For a detailed explanation of how to use this feature, see the video Set Paste Shape by Pitch in the VisualCAM Stencil Design series. The Delete Rename button permits the deletion from and renaming of stencil shape sets or stencil shapes in the library. The Stencil Shape Delete Rename dialog box is resizable if needed as well. Inside there are two tables, Shape Set and Shapes. The Shapes table also includes the name of the currently selected shape set. Both the shape set and shapes multi-column lists may be sorted ascending or descending with a left click on any column. The shape list is a multi-selection list, so for example, say I want to delete all the shapes that are not being used. First, I sort the used column alphabetically to group them all together. After selecting the first unused shape, I hold down the Shift key on my keyboard and select the last one. The Delete Selected button becomes active, and I click on it to indicate I want these particular shapes removed from the shape set. Deleted shape sets and shapes are not immediately removed from the list. Instead, the text is marked in red to indicate they have been chosen for deletion once the dialog box is okayed. The Delete Selected buttons will change to Undelete Selected depending on which item is currently selected and whether it has been chosen for deletion or not. If multiple shapes are selected, then a majority rule is applied. If most of the shapes are deleted, then the button will become Undelete Selected and vice versa. Double-clicking on the name in either list will permit editing of the name. Note that names must be unique in both original and new names. For example, you cannot rename the bullet shape to oblong without first okaying the dialog box between steps. This is required to prevent ambiguity in updating the references in the footprints to the shape sets and/or shapes, since the footprint references are by name. Attempts to rename to a non-unique name will result in an error message and the name remaining unchanged. Canceling the dialog box will return you to the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box without saving any changes. When you OK the dialog box, the changes will be applied, but the changes are not propagated to the design until the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box is also okayed. If the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box is canceled, any changes made in the Delete Rename dialog box will also be lost. Finally, the Report button generates the Stencil Footprint Device Report, which is based on the currently loaded Footprint Shape Library and provides a detailed report on each footprint used. When the report is invoked using this control, the Report dialog box and the Footprint Library dialog box both remain active, and the two dialog boxes will interact. When the footprint selection in the Report dialog box is changed, that footprint will become the selected footprint in the Footprint Library dialog box. Similarly, when changes are made in the Footprint Library dialog box, the Report dialog box will automatically update to reflect those changes when it becomes the active dialog box. Updates are not done dynamically to prevent constant updating as values are changed. Note that different values may exist for different pins within a footprint or device because of the pin size or the shape assigned. All similar pins and shapes are grouped together. It is recommended that once you finish setting up your shape set, that you run the report to verify that your shapes pass your limit rules. Any error will be highlighted in red. For example, in my design, the area ratio column is red and lists 0.63 for footprint SMD17. The area ratio limit we have set is 0.66, so we know that the size of the paste shape is too small. The pins affected by this error are listed under the pin column 1 to 7 and 9 to 17. Click on the footprint and the same footprint is displayed in the preview window. Unselect pin 8. As we can see from the report, pin 8 is not an issue. I will change the width from -10 to -5% and then click back on the report dialog and the report will be updated. The error is no longer highlighted as it now passes the test. Continue to fix any area ratio or aspect ratio errors and then click on the Close button to close the report dialog and return to the Footprint Shape Library. We are getting close to completing the tour of the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box, but since it is so important, I want to mention again that changing any settings of a shape changes the shape definition and will apply to all uses of that shape in the currently loaded footprint library. So it is important when you have used the current shape on a footprint that you do not make any modifications to the settings unless you want all parts to have this new shape. Again, if you want to preserve your shape, but make a similar one with a small modification, have your shape name selected and then click on the Shape Name pull-down and select New. All settings that were assigned to the shape will be copied to the new shape and you can make your setting changes. Note these changes will not affect paste layer data that has already been created. The changes will only apply if the paste data is regenerated. When you have finished defining all the shapes, click on the OK button to exit the dialog and save the changes. You can return to the footprint library at any time to change any of your shape settings. Once the paste shapes are set up, you are ready to move on to generating the stencil for your design, which is described in detail in the other identification videos in this same series. This completes the Stencil Footprint Shape Library dialog box video in VisualCAM's Stencil Design series.